and welcome to another episode of RiesKitchen. This is going to be our last one for the year, and so we're going to focus on something a bit Christmassy. I remember when I was first diagnosed as a celiac, that first Christmas I felt like I missed out on everything because you couldn't eat any of the special foods. And really, that's not the case. So today we're going to be focusing on Christmas pudding. The recipe we're going to use came from my partner Miles's family, his grandmother, and back in 1926 she got this out of the Argus. I've converted it to gluten-free very simply. It's an awesome Christmas pudding recipe. But with all baking, getting the ratios is really important. So I'm going to tell you about it in ounces, and then on my blog later you'll see that I've converted it for you. Some of the numbers look a bit odd in grams, but in ounces it all works, and this is delicious. But this recipe is not something you whip up on Christmas Eve ready for the next day. It's best to get it done nice and early, so November, early December, because the longer you let it sit in the fridge or hang, and we'll talk about that later, the better the flavours develop. So let's get started with our ingredients. There's a few of them and a few bits of equipment that you need, but it really is an easy recipe. So to start with, we have 12 ounces of sultanas, 12 ounces of raisins, 8 ounces of butter, just roughly cubed, 5 ounces of plain flour, gluten-free of course, 8 ounces of sugar, just general white sugar, 2 ounces of blanched almonds that have been chopped through the food processor, half a cup of milk, 2 ounces of dried fig chopped, and this is a dried fig if you've never seen one, 2 ounces of mixed peel. In this little bowl I have 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of mixed peel, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This is a generous teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg, a teaspoon of baking powder, a little bit extra plain flour that we'll use to dress our cloth, and 4 eggs. And our last ingredient is 7 ounces of freshly made breadcrumbs. Now to get this 7 ounces of breadcrumbs, I've used about 6 slices of commercially prepared gluten-free bread. And you can use the crust, no need to cut it off, just run it through your food processor. Being aware that being gluten-free, it might clug a little bit, so don't do it all in one hit, make it in multiple batches. And as you can see through my bowl, I've got quite a few bits of crust through. Now let's have a look at the equipment that we need. In the shops at the moment, there's a plethora of different pudding basins that you can buy, and you see I have a range here, from the small one for the one person, all the way up to the feeder crowd, which will feed 12 to 15 people. Now, a mixture that we're going to make today will easily fit in this pudding bowl, but what I'm going to do to make it much more sensible for what I'm going to need it for is to divide it and use this 4-cup bowl, which will feed 6 to 8 people. So if we just get rid of these ones out the way. I also have here a traditional metal steamer. Now this is also a 4-cup one, and it was given to me by my kid brother for my 21st, filled with lollies, and has certainly had a lot of use over the years. Absolutely nothing wrong with this, it's just a bit flatter, and I like the shape that I get out of using these ones, so that's what I'm going to do. So we'll move that one out the way as well. Now we also need to talk about the twine that we're going to use to tie up either our cloth, or if we're not going to use a cloth and we're going to line our pudding basin with baking paper and then tin foil, we need a twine that will deal with the rigours of being boiled, because this one will be boiled for 3 hours. Our large one would have been boiled for 5 hours. And so there's special cooking cotton that you can purchase, but then I prefer to use the cloth. It's just a little bit more traditional. Now this is calico, unbleached calico. Now when you buy it from your fabric retailer, you'll need to wash it without soap first, just to get any impurities out. Now this is 60 centimetres square, which is the perfect size for my 4-cup bowl. If I was going to be using the larger bowl, I'd need 1 metre by 1 metre. So now we need to prep our cloth. And to do that, we grab that extra plain flour that we had before, and we just sprinkle it over the top, and then I'm going to rub that flour in. And what this does is it gives us a nice crust on our outside of our pudding and helps stop it all being absorbed through the cloth. So now we can get started cooking. So into our bowl, I'm just going to add our butter. Let's go in. And sugar. And now we're going to cream that until a light colour, and you can't see the sugar crystals any longer. All right, let's see how we're going. It's looking nice and light and fluffy. Wipe it down off the beaters. I can still, as I rub that between my fingers, I can still feel a bit crystalline, so that's not quite ready yet. Yeah, that's perfect, ready to go. All right, so the next thing we need to do now is just add our eggs one at a time. And as always, we crack one into a bowl, just to make sure it's all right, and the odd chance that it's not. Now when we add each egg, there is a chance that the mixture might curdle, so it'll look a little bit like scrambled eggs. If that does, don't panic. We'll just add a tablespoon or two of our flour between each egg if that's what we're going to need to do. So I'll just scrape most of the butter off there. All right. Now just do this slowly. Egg number 2. So this mixture's curdled a little bit. So I'll just whisk that up. So I'm just going to add a spoonful or 2 of our flour. Mix all that in from the side while I've got the beater up. And then we'll keep going. That's looking better. All right, so now we add egg number 3. Beat that through. And egg number 4. So now what I'm going to do is bring down those beaters a bit. Make sure it's fairly well incorporated through. Now into our milk, I'm just going to put the bicarb that we had. Give that a quick stir. And now we can add all of our other ingredients. So, our breadcrumbs, and our fruit, fruit peel, the secret ingredient fig, flour, almonds, and then our spices. Give that a good start on low, obviously, because otherwise we'll make a good mess. I'll just add my milk, which has started to froth. All right, now this doesn't take too much mixing. Let's pull that out. And it's important that we check to make sure that it's fairly evenly distributed, all our fruit. And then we need to get our pot ready because we need our water boiling before we put our pudding in. That looks pretty good. So now to our pot. You'll see here that I've got my bowl sitting on a saucer. Our pot needs to be deep enough that the saucer can fit in the bottom with our bowl and the lid go on snugly. And that's because we don't want direct heat on the bottom of our bowl because we'll get uneven cooking of our pudding. So the sauce is to diffuse that. Now I'm going to half fill this pot up with the saucer in it with boiling water out of my kettle. Just because then it's faster. And turn the gas on. So now it's time to get our pudding in our bowl. So with our prepared cloth from before, just going to lay that into our bowl. No need to grease the bowl or anything like that. Pop it in. We're going to put about half of this in there. So it's about half. I can see my pot's boiling its head off, so I'll just turn it down just a little bit because I'm not quite ready to put my pudding in. So now I'm just smoothing it in to fill up all the edges. And now it's just time to tie it up. So making sure that I get all the edges in. pull it together. Just give it a little twist just to help hold it. About so of string. Around, twist and around. Making sure that it becomes watertight. Whoops, good knot. And then a final knot on the back, just to be sure. And then she'll be ready to go into our pot. Now it's really important, once we've made sure that all our edges are caught up under that knot, that we put our cloth back over the top. We don't want any of the cloth getting into the water. Now this gas is just a little bit too high for this, so I'm just going to light this one and move this pot over, because what I want to be able to do is have this as low as it'll go. You want a really low bubble. We're going to steam our pudding, not boil it. So if we take the lid off, now be really careful of course, this is hot. Make sure that your saucer is roughly in the middle of the pot. So now, carefully putting our bowl, remembering this is really hot. And then we put our lid back on top. And we want that to go on a really low bubble for 3 hours. Now every half hour we need to come back and check and top up the water with boiling water from your kettle to keep it going. At the end of the 3 hours, or if you're using the big one, doing the whole mixture, that's 5 hours, we then take it out and put it on a plate to cool to room temperature and then store it in our fridge until Christmas. When we're ready to eat, this pudding will take another hour, put back in boiling water exactly as we are now to get it ready, or the large pudding will take 2 hours to re-steam and heat all the way through. All right, this is the hard bit, the waiting. So now it's time to serve. We've probably all eaten way too much, but there's always room for pudding. So taking our pudding out from the fridge, pop it back in its bowl, and now we're going to pop it back in the pot, just like we had it before, and let it steam for another hour. That'll give some time for this lunch to settle. So, let's get our pudding out. It's a pity we don't have smell emission. This is awesome. All right. So now to cut your string. Now you can reuse your cloth, which we will do. Oh, look at that. That is one pretty awesome looking Christmas pudding. So with your serving plate, et voila! So now with the family all gathered, there's only one thing left to say, and that's from everyone here at RiesKitchen, from our family to yours, Merry Christmas. So guys, let's tuck in.